Yo, and welcome back to another Tea Time with Sam. This episode, we've got Sam Medysky, my good mate, all the way from Canada. Hey, what are you doing? Trying to film something here. And Benji, my cat, who's making an appearance. But yeah, I'm really excited about this. In about an hour's time, I'm going to meet Sam, and we're going to have a good chat about his kiteboarding history, when he first started kiting. He learned to kiteboard back in like before 2000, so one of the very first kiteboarders, and it's really interesting to compare his story from North America compared to some of my European friends. So yeah, let's get into it. Check it out. Tea Time with Sam Medysky. Hey Sam, what up? And welcome to this next episode of Tea Time with Sam Light. How's it going, mate?
Yeah, doing good, doing good. We're in social physical distancing here in Canada, so not the full lockdown like the UK, but yeah, we're staying busy.
You still getting any sessions on the water?
We haven't had wind the past few days, but I was getting out about a week or two ago when we had wind here, which was awesome. But it's a bit of a touchy subject. We are allowed to go kiting, but there's a lot of, I guess, shaming going on if you're getting out on the water because you're putting yourself and maybe others at risk. So yeah, I get out. I just don't post about it.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, dude. The shaming is gnarly in the UK too. Like so bad that nobody is kiting. Um, so I'm not even going to say whether I have or not because I'm going to get in trouble if I'm honest. But yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm more dangerous on a bike than I am kiting. But I also get that it kind of has to be like one rule for everybody because if somebody sees me out there, they're like, "Oh, why is he out there? I want to go out there." So I kind of get it. It is a tricky situation. But let's get back into the good questions. I want to dive deep, Sam. I want to know when the first time you saw somebody kiting. Do you remember that?
The first time, to be completely honest, I don't think I saw somebody kiting before I started kiting myself, which is
That's pretty
kind of
cool.
crazy.
That's
My
pretty
my I started kiting with my dad in Sauble Beach on Lake Huron, in Canada. I was windsurfing a little bit. My next door neighbor, this like kids rig. So I started windsurfing really young, like 6 or 7. And then my dad brought home a windsurfing magazine, and there was an article in it about kiteboarding, the sister sport to windsurfing. And it was like photos of like Robbie and all the guys on Maui. And then after that, my dad ordered some foil kites from Concept Air. And then he ordered the first Whippica Classic 8.5, which we still have to this day.
cool.
And that was
And
in 1998.
98. No way.
98, yeah.
Dude, that's super early. Like that's at the conception almost.
Yeah, it was really early. And yeah, I mean, everything to launching the kite. We had no idea how to launch the kite, how to keep the kite on the beach. I remember my dad, he would put a stake in the ground, and it was just 2-line kites. So you'd have the hard line or the hard kite fully powered up downwind on its leading edge, and he would set kayaks across the lines to prevent the kite from rolling and launching because we didn't know how to dome or turtle the kite on the beach. And that was, I mean, we learned ourselves, and it was rough, like getting dragged down the beach, and it was kind of scary. It was definitely
How
scary.
old were you?
I was 8 years old.
Damn. So, and you were 8 when you were like doing your first water starts.
I would have been, yeah, I started my first water starts. I still have photos of it. Was on a 4-line. It was a Traction X Concept Air foil kite, and it was on 2 handles. So you had the brakes just to bring the kite down, and then you had your steering lines on the top, and between the top 2 bits of the handle, you had a piece of rope, and I would hook into my little Dakine speed seat, and that was how I'd get kiting. But I learned a lot. A lot of my early days of kiting was on snow, which was super easy to learn because you don't have to worry about the buoyancy. So in the winter here in Canada, the lakes freeze over, and I go out on skis or a snowboard, with the small foil kites, and that's where I learned a lot of my riding. It probably wasn't until I would say 2001 that I could actually stay upwind on the water.
Hmm.
But
So
yeah,
you'd
our
snow
first
kite
board.
on the lakes that you would kite surf on normally.
Yeah, yeah. So there in the winter, you kind of have like an awkward shoulder season where it's a little too cold to kite on the water, but the lakes haven't frozen over fully yet, so you didn't get the kite kind of spring and fall sometimes. But then, peak winter and peak summer, you're either on the water on your board or on the snow on your skis or board.
Oh, nice. And is that where you guys have your like summer house thing?
Yeah, yeah. Our cottage is on Lake Huron, which it's a massive lake. It looks like an ocean if you're standing on the shore because you can't see the other side. It's roughly 96 miles to the other side. So it's a big body of water, one of the largest bodies of fresh water in the world.
Wow. And how's the kite scene there now? Like, has it expanded? And
It's definitely growing. I remember in the early days of kiting, you're driving around to different spots to find the wind, and you'd always see, the usual characters, right? Nowadays, when I go kiting, you'll see so many people that you've never seen before, and it's cool to see that kiting's growing that much. I'm sure it's the same in the UK. You see so many younger kids coming up, or just new people to the sport that have gotten into it. And it's really grown, I'd say, in the past, what's it been, 22 years.
yeah. So when did you first kite outside of the lake and start traveling with kiting? Did you go somewhere with your dad or down to the Outer
So my
Banks?
we went down to the Outer Banks in 2001. My dad went down there. Yeah, it would have been 2001. He went down to Hatteras it would have been Kitty Hawk Kites to get certified as an instructor. So we went down, and that was through PASA, Professional Air Sports Association. So he went down and got certified as an instructor. And my dad was a high school teacher, so he could teach kiteboarding during the summer months, and then he was a high school teacher the rest of the year. So the idea was that teaching kiting in the summer would help pay for the gear and any travel that we'd do in the winter. And then we did some family trips to, I think, Barbados back in the day, and Antigua. I actually met Dre my first time when I would have been, I think, 13 years old. He was riding, it would have been a Cabrina CO2 and the underground wave tray. I don't know if you remember that board.
Yeah.
Everybody had that
Cool.
for a while.
I mean, I was kind of after that, like when I learned, but
yeah.
no, I remember that, seeing that board. It was cool.
Yeah. And I guess for me, my first event was the 2004 Velocity Games. That was like a really big event in North America. And I went and competed in the juniors, and that's where I got my first podium. I took first in that event in the junior division. And that was also the first time I met Aaron. Aaron came over, and that was like really when I think that was the first year he won the world tour. He would have been, I think, 15 or 16 at the time. And he came over, and it was like seeing God all of a sudden. He was doing kite loop handle passes. Nobody had seen that before. And I was like, whoa. So
That's
it was,
cool.
where
was
pretty
the
wild.
Velocity Games event held?
That was in Corpus Christi, Texas, which there used to be loads of events. I always think back to it. There used to be loads of events in North America all over the place. And then nowadays, really, the only event that we have for the past few years has been the park events, like Hood River and Hatteras. So it's kind of sad to see, but there used to be a lot more.
So was there like Canadian nationals and things like that?
So the first Canadian nationals was in Ile de Medellin, a small island off the coast of Quebec in Canada. And that was the first Canadian nationals, and that was in 2005. And basically, if you won the Canadian nationals, you got a wild card into the PKRA event that was held there the following week. So I went to that event, and I think I was 15 at the time, and I won the first nationals. And then I got the wild card into the PKA, and then went and competed in the NAD and just got destroyed. The
That's
level
cool, though.
was so high, but it was really cool. And it was also, it was nice to kind of see that riding level, and then give me kind of motivation to go and push further and further. Because it really, in North America, I would say a lot of the world tour, and it still is that way, a lot of the world tours always been European based riders for the most part. And a lot of the tour stops have always been in Europe or other places other than North America. I think the only PKAs that were ever in North America, there was one or two in the DR, and then one or two in Canada. But I don't think there's ever been a PKA or any world tour stops besides the Park League in the US.
Wow. Yeah, I'm surprised. I'm surprised as well, because there's some great spots. So do you remember your first sponsor? Do you remember how you got your first sponsor, how that came around?
I don't really remember exactly how I got it, but my first sponsor was Gastra. And I think it was kind of through the kite school a little bit. My dad was working with a few different brands to get gear for the school to teach on. But I remember they gave me a 10-meter Gastra GXR. That was like my kite. I could ride it in 20 knots, 10 knots. It didn't matter. That was the one kite I had. And at that time, Gastra was a big brand. There was Susie Mai was on the team, Gisela Polito, Sky Solback. There was, I mean, a lot of like big names from that time on the team. And so that was my first sponsor. And then in 2005 or 2006, I went and switched to Nash. And I was with Nash from 2005 or 2006 till 2009. And I remember actually I'd watch all the videos on Kiteform, and I remember seeing a video of you, I think it was on Hailing Island, with that Fat Boy Slim song, doing slims and kite loop slims, and I was like, oh shit, there's another Sam out there.
Likewise,
So
I remember
pretty
seeing
funny.
videos of you thinking, check out this Sam in Canada. That's funny.
That's funny.
So did you always know that you wanted to go into the industry and be a pro kiteboarder, and make it your career? Like, do you remember kind of when you thought that? Like, how did you supplement, that travel and stuff at the start?
I guess all through high school, I didn't have anything that I was really interested in. And both my parents are in education. So it was pretty tough to tell them like, hey, I don't want to go to university or college. I have no idea what I want to do. So I just kept following kind of my dream of just kiting and wanting to be a pro. Like even when I was like first getting into it, when I was really young, I was like, I want to be like Dan Trico. He was like the local board shaper. I wanted to sand fiberglass and kiteboard as much as possible. And then later on, once I did some more events and whatnot, I wanted to be a pro kiter. And so as soon as I finished high school at 17 or 18, I went to Brazil and did my first, season in Brazil. And I feel like that at the time, a lot of people would do that. They would go and spend 2-3 months in Brazil and then go and do a big event after that. And for me, I would teach kiteboarding at my dad's kite school. I'd work carpentry, doing construction, some odd jobs, doing renovations and stuff. And then I would go and kind of kite wherever I could that was windy. So Brazil was the first stop for me after graduating high school. And that's kind of where I guess I made my name in the industry starting out, was going to Brazil and getting into the Triple S that year in 2009. And that kind of helped kickstart my career in North America. And then, but I would still, I mean, at that time, that year, I switched to Best, and they started to help with travel and whatnot. But I'd still go and teach kiteboarding almost every summer to help kind of supplement it and whatnot. And yeah, I didn't ever do a GoFundMe or anything like that. So.
I'm sure being exposed to those like really big early events, made a massive difference and inspired you, and you could see the potential when you saw Aaron back in the early 2000s and whatever. That must have been giving you a lot of motivation to pursue it.
Yeah, definitely. I think seeing and also being from Canada, it was like so far away, everything it seemed like, as far as like, there were really no other professional kiteboarders from Canada. Everybody was European or from the States or wherever. So it was, yeah, to see them in person was like a dream come true. And, as a kid, I'd watch every kiteboarding film on VHS or DVD before going to school in the morning. The first one's like High and The Power Zone, and then it was Awake and Unhooked and all those ones. And so it was pretty cool to finally get involved. And I remember like actually meeting everybody and getting to hang out with them at Triple S and some of the first events. It was pretty cool that, as you look up to everybody and then all of a sudden you realize like, okay, they're just a normal person that's just as stoked on this sport as I am. So that was pretty cool, but definitely motivating meeting them the first few times and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah, and as you say, Triple S was, where you really started to make your name. And I think a lot of the big, riders in North America established themselves at the Triple S because it was basically, the nationals. It was, one of the biggest events in the industry. And that's when we all started to hang out, wasn't it? It was probably about 10 years ago now almost. And we had such a good crew. I think that was what was so cool about it. Like, we were all very similar, and just motivated, loved the sport, but also kind of, I guess, we saw the bigger picture as well. We're able to bring a lot of value to the sponsorship, and then that's when we started like bouncing ideas off each other and trying to do projects together. I remember our trip to Brazil. Remember that dark house with no windows.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's pretty crazy to think about. I guess I kind of look at it as well, like, for yourself, you came competing on some of the world tour stops and whatnot, and then there's a lot of us from North America that didn't do a lot on the world tour, but then we kind of all came together and collaborated, and that's where I think, Park really started to take off. But then also we all made our, name in the industry from being a little bit different and not just, following the competitive scene. And I think you see that in a lot of sports as well. Snowboarding, there's the Mark McMorrises that are just going and following the world tour. And then there's the free riders that are going out and creating content and, doing more travel stories and, pushing themselves in different ways like that. And I think that's kind of where what we started to do when we all started to get together and travel more. And it was cool to see, yeah, I guess riders like Aaron as well, right? Like step back from the competitive scene and start to do something similar. And yeah, I think it added a lot of value to the sport for sure.
Yeah, it's hard to sustain that, competition, motivation, and also, unless you're like winning the world tour, it's very hard to justify the cost um, against the value to your sponsors. If you're really looking at it, are you, spending $5,000 to go to, every event actually adds up super quick, and unless you're winning, it's not really worth it for the sponsors. Especially as it's more expensive trying to, as most of the stops are in Europe, trying to get from North America to the PKRA in Spain would have cost a fortune. And if you didn't, win, then it was, not worth doing it, wasn't it? So the Triple S had so much media exposure, and just it was such a cool way for us all to, it's kind of, I guess, like the free ride crew, slightly more media driven, all kind of, met at the Triple S. And that's where, things started to flourish, and we started to do the Kite Park League stuff, and there was more events and things like that.
Yeah, I think it definitely as well. During all of that too, I think back to it, and not only was the sport evolving and changing, but also so was the world around us as far as how media worked, right? Like we started, think you started your kiting career, you're watching most of the videos on VHS and DVD. And then it was like they'd be out there on Vimeo or YouTube. And then all of a sudden Instagram comes along, and, it really changed how we view media these days over the past, 10 to 15 years. Like Facebook is what, 15, maybe 20 years old now. And maybe 15 years, I guess. And then Instagram came along, and it's, you have that instant gratification of it right here in your hand, but it's also so easy to see the media. And I think that's, you know, all of us getting into that side of the sport, creating content, we kind of struck it at the right time, because I do think now there's so much content out there that it can be tougher for riders coming up through the ranks to get their content viewed over somebody else.
Definitely. Yeah, we were super lucky to be there, right? At the start of Instagram and social media. It's hard to even think that, when we kind of first got sponsored and we're like doing events and stuff, there wasn't social media, for many years we were
Yeah.
putting out videos and content, and there was no Instagram. And then we were lucky to be there from the start. I do often think that, yeah, for riders now, it's so tough because the algorithms are so set up for, it just snowboarding. If you have more followers, it's so much easier to get your content out there. But which is why I think you can still do it. It's just harder because there is so much content out there. But it's still possible. You just got to really find your niche.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that's also what's kind of beautiful about the sport. And, from the early days of kiting till now, there's so many disciplines within our sport, right? Like the foiling now is taken off like crazy, whether you be racing on a foil or free riding on a foil, and all these different disciplines, which I think is pretty appealing for kiters, because back in the day it was, people were kind of following what was going on the world tour. You had two sides, big air, kind of wake style stuff. And now there's just so many different avenues for kiteboarding,
Yeah,
and so many different ways riders can go.
exactly. So do you remember like when you started to think about moving into more of a sales role and trying to think about your future more? Was that always in the back of your mind, or did that kind of happen, naturally?
It was definitely always in the back of my mind, especially I think like most people, they see as they're getting older, they see their friends, like going to university, and then all of a sudden your friends are graduating university and you're like, ooh, I've had a good few years here traveling and enjoying myself and following my dream. But you, that definitely hit home a little bit as far as my career was going. But then also I think, for me, I was with Best for just shy of 10 years, and obviously they took a turn, and they weren't doing so well. They dropped a lot of their team, and all of a sudden I was like, okay, I need to, sustain myself and be able to make money. So I got more involved with the brand. I was originally doing more and more R&D with the designers, helping test products and give feedback. And then I took on a sales position with them. So that was kind of the start. And then after a year, 2 years of that, then I actually switched to Airrush and started to really grow with the brand there, doing sales. And then I've taken over now as a sales manager for the Americas for Airrush, which is a pretty cool opportunity. But I guess I didn't really ever, I stumbled into it a little bit, in the sense it was always, I wanted to stay involved in the industry. It's all I know. It's, been my passion my entire life. I wanted to stay connected to it. I wanted to stay connected to all my good friends through the sport. And so naturally I got into sales. I didn't ever think I would be in sales. I thought I was going to be a pro kiteboarder and just retire, but that's,
I don't know,
that's
like
not
we always
reality.
chatted about it, like we always got on really well and chatted about it right from day one, like we're always very conscious of that. And I think we had similar upbringings, and
Sure.
our parents and also friends, like I had the same, like people are like, so what are you going to do like after kiting, and it does weigh on your
Yeah.
mind because people like ask you that so much, but you end up
Yeah, for
building a career within the industry, and you have the contacts, and it'd be a shame to throw all of
sure.
that away. And people in like the industry needs, people like yourself that have the experience and know how far the equipment's come, and how the marketing works. I think that is so valuable, and the industry is growing so much. So there's still a huge amount of potential, and it's so diverse. Like you say, there's so many different disciplines now. like if you really find what you like and you can harness that and choose the path that you want to go down, there's a lot of opportunity, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of opportunity, and I think you said it right with, the industry needs people like us. And I kind of look at it, the generation before us, I look at what they're doing now within the kiting industry, Um, some of them are brand owners, some of them work as designers, some of them are shop owners. And I look at our generation now and you see more of us getting further and further involved, yourself taking on a role with marketing and team manager with Slingshot, Brandon working more with Liquid Force doing development and whatnot, Craig's team manager at Duotone, and Alex Fox is brand manager with Slingshot. So it's cool to see everybody, we all started out together and it was all, it was all our dream to kite, and we followed that. And it was cool to see now kind of the next generation of riders coming up, and we're still involved in the industry, but just on a different kind of platform or a different side of the industry, which is really cool. And I think, I don't think you could really go to school for some of the jobs that we're doing. You need the experience of being in the industry and understanding how it works and whatnot. They don't have a university to kiteboarding yet, so
Yeah, that's it. And we learn
yeah,
to
I do
make it
think a
work. I think
lot of it's experience.
that's why we're able to sustain it, because somehow we made it work because we wanted to pursue our passion. And you learn so much trying to make it work. I think that's how you learn. So I felt like that, it was just a natural progression, doing the team manager stuff, because I've figured out how to do it myself for more than 10 years. So naturally it's like the other team riders start asking me like, hey, how do I do this, how do you do that? And it just makes sense, because we've learned how to make a little bit of money go a long way and build a career. And then you can go on and help other people. But if you had someone that come out of university that had done a marketing degree and stepped into a team manager role in a kite company, it just wouldn't work. Like every industry, and especially kiting industry, is so niche and specialist. You really have to love it. So yeah, we're lucky like that. We found our own things that we enjoy.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, I mean, you see it in other industries as well, right? Like different athletes from whatever it may be, snowboarding, they usually end up staying involved in their industry in some way, shape, or form. And it's because you have that experience and that knowledge of that industry. And like you said, you can't just have, it definitely helps to have a marketing degree, but you have to know that industry and know what works, what doesn't work. And that's really firsthand experience, I think.
Yeah. So how did you end up buying your sweet off the grid house in Canada? Like when did that
Oh.
start to come into play? That's awesome.
Um, I kind of always wanted to find a place to settle down in Canada, and also, I saw you get a place in the UK and more friends settling down. And then I realized, okay, I love being Canadian. I love our country and everything that we're fortunate to have here in Canada with education, healthcare, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, okay, Canada's the spot. And I had been coming to Squamish for years to do the Canadian Nationals and the kite here in the summer. And so I had spent about a full year here, winter and summer. And I was like, okay, I really like Squamish. And I ended up stumbling upon this house that was kind of in my price range. And it's way up a gravel road and middle of nowhere kind of thing, but it was the right price. And I went into the house, I remember, with the real estate agent. It was freezing cold outside, and it was January 5th or something. And we walked inside and the house was almost as cold inside as it was outside. And I was like, I'll take it. And then, so the house is completely off grid. It's a lot of work. I mean, heating it with solely a wood stove fireplace and creating your own electricity to charge the battery bank. But it is rewarding and I really do enjoy it. But yeah, it's definitely work.
Yeah. I mean, it must be great to have that place in a time like this. The house is naturally isolated and you're off the grid, so it must feel even nicer up there now, away from the madness.
Yeah, no, I feel fortunate to be where I am, but there's a trade-off to everything. There's also the convenience of being in the city and being able to bike into the supermarket or the shops and stuff like that. I'm definitely isolated where I am, and when things are normal, it is sometimes tough to convince friends to come up because they're like, oh, you live way up there. Why don't you come into town? We can go to the bar. We can go to restaurants here. So there's always a trade-off, but I do enjoy it. I grew up pretty far up north in Ontario, and we had lots of property. We didn't have any neighbors nearby, so I'm kind of used to that. So yeah, it's fun, but it is kind of funny, like the contrast between being on the road, traveling, kiting, and then I come home and it's very much different where I am. But as long
Yeah.
as I got an internet connection, I can keep working.
So what advice would you give to a young teenager, that has discovered kiting and wants to make it their career? Is there anything you've learned that you would want to pass on to them?
I think the biggest thing that I've learned, and I think if you look at a lot of the kiters who have done really well in their career, is having the right attitude, being really positive. And you may not be the best rider at your beach, but if you've got a good attitude and you're the most friendly guy at the beach, that goes a long way. And it's not always being, the best rider on the water, because a sponsor at the end of the day, they're using you as a marketing asset. And if you've got a bad attitude and you're not marketable, then you're not really worth a whole lot to a brand. So I think having a really positive attitude and being that friendly, awesome, stoked guy at the beach goes a long way. And then also on the competition side or the riding side, just being passionate about the sport, kiting as much as you can. And then also, I tell this to younger riders, and I'm sure you do as well, but injury prevention, staying fit off the water as well to help prevent any injuries, and always being ready for a session.
Yeah, you don't always take that seriously, young enough. I definitely tell a young myself that, just because I definitely winged it for a number of years, and it does catch up with you eventually, doesn't it? But we were lucky that we're able
Oh
to
yeah.
kite so much, and you can, as long as you can kite all the time, you can get away with it. But it's definitely worth trying to do other things as well, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And I think, yeah, I don't know. It's funny. I remember when I was younger, the older guys at the beach would be like, "Oh, you won't be young forever. You're gonna start to, feel pain and this and that." And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, okay, old guys." And then now I'm that older guy telling the young guys at the beach, like, "Hey, you should drink lots of water and stretch and do this and this." And so, yeah, it's kind of funny growing up that way, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. And well, I mean, obviously, a lot of things have been shut down this year, but is there anything you've got on the horizon that you're excited about? Things with Air Rush and trips, anything like that? We normally stay together in Cape Town. We've had a pad together for the last like 5 years, which is great fun. But who knows whether even that'll be happening now?
I know, I know. Well, normally this time of year we're getting our house all lined up for Hatteras and the Triple S. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy what we're living through right now. I mean, this is something that I don't think the world's had to deal with for a long time, closed borders and whatnot. So it's scary. I don't know where the next event will be, or when that'll be, but it sounds like the summer could be a bit of a write-off. But yeah, I guess hopefully everybody gets back to health, and maybe in the fall somewhere. I don't know. We'll see what happens, but hopefully Cape Town for sure. I mean, that's 10 months away, so I'd hope by then we're back to normal, and yeah, we'll be back out there sending
Who
some big
knows?
jumps.
Unless we get a vaccine, who knows, man? And are people still buying kites?
Yeah, people are still buying kites. We've got some new products coming out here in the next few months, which I'm pretty excited about. Yeah, so that'll be pretty awesome. And yeah, it's kind of cool to see how the industry's gone. Back in the day, each brand had one kite that was their kind of do it all. It's like the Nash torch back in the day, right? Or the slingshot fuel. And now, you know, every brand's got a full range for every discipline of kiteboarding. So it's kind of cool to see how that's been developing and whatnot. And yeah, it's cool to see how the market receives different products and how different products do in the market. So yeah, lots of cool stuff happening.
Cool. Exciting, man. Well, yeah, I look forward when we can finally do another trip together. And I was actually genuinely planning on coming to visit. And I've been saying it for years. I feel bad that I still haven't come, but I'm gonna come. I'm gonna come.
One day.
I know.
Yeah,
I
no,
know. It's one thing after another, but I'm coming. Well, when we're allowed. Don't know when I'll be allowed now.
yeah, yeah. Well, hopefully sooner than later, and then yeah, well, I'll be over in the UK for your wedding at some point.
Yeah. Who knows when that'll be. Cool, man. Well, that about wraps it up. But thanks a lot for your time. It was cool to share that knowledge and history with everyone.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I'll link below all the videos and stuff we talked about. So make sure you check that out. But thanks, guys. Cheers for watching, and thanks for listening.
Sick, awesome. Sam Medysky is a good dude. He shared a lot of very valuable knowledge, and he's made a very good name for himself in the industry. So there's a lot of good points in there to take away. But yeah, as always, thank you so much for listening and watching. Subscribe if you're not already. Like the video. Drop me a comment who I should get on the show next. But yeah, thanks for tuning in. I'll see you in the next episode. Peace out.